You've been up since 3 a.m. cutting potatoes while shells explode nearby, and a man's life depends on whether you can heat his meal to exactly 165 degrees in a trench using gasoline and a helmet. Welcome to being a field cook in World War II. If you use these to fall asleep, hit subscribe so you don't miss any. Comment where you're at and the time too. Kind of fun seeing all the different places. Someone from Iceland commented once, and I had to Google what time zone that even is. Okay, tonight it's World War II field cooking, but before we go anywhere, get cozy, like actually cozy. Pillows good? Blanket situation handled? Perfect, trust me on this one. Your eyes crack open to darkness, only the faintest hint of dawn visible through the canvas tent. It's 1943, and you're in an Allied camp somewhere in Europe. The rough wool blanket scratches against your skin as you shift. Your back aches from sleeping on what's basically a glorified burlap sack stuffed with straw. But you don't have time to complain about comfort. The sudden blast of a whistle jolts you fully awake. 4 in the goddamn morning. Again, you'd think being a cook would get you better hours than the infantry, but no. In the field, cooks are up first, to bed last. Rise and shine, cookie, the mess sergeant's voice booms through the tent. 200 hungry boys need breakfast in 2 hours. Your head still foggy with sleep, you roll off your cot and pull on your uniform. The fabric is stiff with yesterday's grease and sweat. Unlike your bed at home, where you might linger for a few more minutes of warmth, here there's no choice. You're already behind schedule. Move your arse, private. Those potatoes won't peel themselves. The moment your boots hit the muddy ground outside, the cold slaps you in the face. It's early spring, and the night chill hasn't burned off yet. Your breath forms clouds in front of you as you trudge toward the field kitchen. The Gulashkanona goulash cannon, as everyone calls it, looms in the pre-dawn gloom. It's a massive field kitchen on wheels, with its tall chimney sticking up like the barrel of artillery, hence the nickname. The Germans invented it, but every army has their version now. This mobile kitchen is your domain, your weapon in the war. As you approach, you can see the mess sergeant already has the fires going. Smoke billows from the chimney, and the smell of burning wood mixes with the damp morning air. What you wouldn't give for a cup of coffee right now, but you know the rule: cooks eat last. Get on those potatoes, rookie, the sergeant barks, pointing to several massive burlap sacks. 200 pounds. I want 'em peeled and diced in 45 minutes. 200 pounds. Your shoulders slump. You grab a small paring knife the army never gives cooks proper equipment and drag the first sack over. Plunging your hands into the cold, dirt-covered potatoes, you get to work. You think that's bad? The sergeant laughs, noticing your expression. Back in North Africa, we had to peel potatoes with our bayonets while standing in a sandstorm. Sand got everywhere. Boys were crunching their way through breakfast for days. You're pretty sure he's exaggerating, but you don't dare say so. Instead, you focus on finding a rhythm. Grab potato, scrape, turn, scrape, slice, toss into the water bucket. Repeat. Your hands quickly grow numb from the cold water. Hey, you know why they made me a cook? Asks a skinny private working beside you. Without waiting for an answer, he continues, I told him I worked at my uncle's restaurant back home. Total lie. I just didn't want to be in the infantry. Now I'm wondering if maybe getting shot at would be better than this. You snort. At least we get to sleep indoors most nights. Yeah. But we still die, he says, suddenly serious. Remember Thompson? His field kitchen took a direct hit last month. They found his ladle before they found his body. A shiver runs down your spine that has nothing to do with the morning chill. Despite being technically non-combat personnel, field cooks aren't exactly safe. The massive smoking kitchens make perfect targets. The enemy knows that destroying food hurts morale faster than anything. Less talking, more peeling, the sergeant shouts. By the time you finish the potatoes, your fingers are cut in a dozen places, stinging from potato juice and bleeding into the water, but there's no time to bandage them. Next come the onions, 50 pounds of them. Your eyes burn and water as you chop, the knife now slippery with a mixture of onion juice and your own blood. "Welcome to war, kid," mutters an older cook as he passes by. "The only difference between us and the infantry is they know who's trying to kill them." The sun is barely up when the sergeant orders you to start the porridge. Massive cauldrons hang over wood fires and you pour in oats, water, salt and a small amount of precious sugar. The heat from the fires is welcome against the morning chill, but it's also oppressive. Sweat begins to soak through your uniform, mixing with the grease and food stains already there. Stir constantly, the sergeant instructs. If it burns, you'll be eating it alone for a week. The wooden paddle you use to stir is 6 feet long and weighs about 10 pounds. After 15 minutes, your shoulders burn with the effort. The porridge bubbles and thickens, occasionally splashing up to scald your hands and arms. You've learned to ignore minor burns. They're just part of the job. "Oh, shit," says another cook suddenly, peering into one of the supply crates. "The bacon's gone off." The sergeant rushes over, his face darkening as he inspects the meat. In the dim light of early morning, you can see the greenish tint and smell the rot. Maggots writhe in the fatty parts. "How bad is it?" he asks. "About half is still okay. The rest," the cook makes a gagging sound. "Salvage what you can," the sergeant orders. "Cut off the bad parts. The men need protein." Your stomach turns at the thought, but you know he's right. In the field, you waste nothing. Food supplies are too precious, too hard to come by, so you watch as two cooks carefully trim away the rotted portions of bacon, saving every edible scrap. "What do we do about the smell?" one of them asks. "Extra pepper," the sergeant answers without hesitation, "and don't tell anyone." This is the reality of being a field cook in wartime. You make do, you improvise, you feed men with whatever you have available, because a hungry soldier is an ineffective soldier. By 5:30 a.m., preparations are in full swing. The smell of cooking food begins to permeate the camp. In the distance, you can hear the stirring of men in their tents, the sound of boots on ground, the occasional cough or laugh. "They're like animals," says the skinny private, nodding toward the sounds. "They can smell food from a mile away. That's because they're starving half the time," you reply. You try marching 20 miles a day on K rations. K rations, the portable, individual meal packages given to soldiers in the field, are notoriously awful. They're meant for emergency use, but the realities of war mean many men subsist on them for days or even weeks. A hot meal from a field kitchen is more than sustenance. It's a luxury, a reminder of home, a morale booster. The bacon situation is under control, but now there's another problem. The coffee grinder has jammed again. Without coffee, you might as well serve the men empty plates. Nothing causes mutiny faster than no morning coffee. "Fix it," the sergeant orders, thrusting the grinder into your hands. "Use whatever you need, just get it working." You examine the grinder, finding a small stone that's gotten mixed in with the beans. After removing it, you take the mechanism apart, clean it as best you can with your filthy rag, and reassemble it. It's still not working perfectly, but it'll do the job. "Not bad," the sergeant admits, testing the repaired grinder. "You've got good hands." It's the closest thing to a compliment you've received since joining the kitchen crew. You try not to look too pleased. As 6 a.m. approaches, the pace becomes frantic. Porridge needs to be ladled into serving trays. Bacon, what's left of it, needs to be fried. Coffee needs to be brewed, gallons and gallons of it. Bread that was baked yesterday needs to be sliced. Every available surface in the kitchen area is covered with food, or preparation materials. "They're coming," someone shouts, and you look up to see the first wave of soldiers approaching, mess kits in hand, breath visible in the cold morning air. "Places, everyone," the sergeant calls out. "Remember, keep the line moving. No seconds until everyone's had firsts." You take your position behind a massive pot of porridge, ladle in hand. The soldiers file past, holding out their mess kits, their faces tired but expectant. You scoop, pour, in a rhythm that quickly becomes mechanical. "Put some muscle into it," the sergeant says, passing behind you. "These boys need calories. Don't be stingy." So you add a little extra to each serving, knowing it means less for someone at the end of the line. It's an impossible moral calculation, but you make it 100 times every meal. "Thanks, Cookie," a mud-splattered corporal says as you fill his mess kit. "Smells good today." You nod, not breaking your rhythm. Another soldier approaches, this one with a bandaged hand. "Can you help me, buddy?" he asks, gesturing to his injury. "Can't hold the tray steady." Without hesitation, you take his mess kit, fill it carefully, and hand it back in a way he can grasp with his good hand. He nods gratefully and moves on. The line seems endless. 200 men, each hungry, each looking to you for their daily sustenance. Some make small talk. Others are silent, their minds already on the day's missions or the previous day's horrors. A few complain about the food, but most are just grateful to have a hot meal. "Hey, is that bacon supposed to be that colour?" a sergeant asks, suspiciously poking at his meat. "That's just the smoke," you lie smoothly. "Special smoking technique from back home." He doesn't look convinced, but moves on anyway. Hunger is a powerful motivator. By the time the last soldier has been served, your arms ache, your back throbs, and you're starving. But there's no rest yet. The cauldrons need to be cleaned, the serving area tidied, and preparations for lunch must begin immediately. "Take 15 minutes to eat," the sergeant tells the kitchen crew. "Then we start on lunch." You fill your own mess kit with what's left porridge scraped from the bottom of the pot, a few scraps of bacon, and coffee that's been sitting so long it's developed a skin. Still, it's hot food, and you wolf it down standing up, too tired to even find a place to sit. "Not bad for your first big breakfast service," the skinny private says, eating beside you. "You didn't drop anything, puke, or get yelled at too much. That's a win in my book." You manage a tired smile. "Thanks. Is it always this intense?" "Nah," he replies, then grins. "Sometimes it's worse. Wait until we have to pack up and move the kitchen on 10 minutes notice, or cook during an air raid, or my personal favourite, when supply lines get cut and the sergeant tells us to get creative with what we feed the men." Your heart sinks at the thought, but before you can respond, the sergeant's voice cuts through your conversation. "Break's over, start peeling those carrots for lunch. We're making stew." And just like that, you're back at it. Your hands find the knife again, your eyes blur with fatigue, but you keep going. Because in war, the fighting never really stops, and neither does hunger. As you work, you think about the men you just fed. In a few hours, some of them might be dead, but for a brief moment this morning, you gave them comfort, a hot meal, a taste of normality in the insanity of war. It's not much in the grand scheme of things, but today, it's your contribution to the war effort. The goulash cannone fires roar as you prepare for the next meal. 200 men, 3 meals a day. Day after day after day until the war ends or you do. This is your battlefield now. And it's only 7 a.m. Your day as a field cook has just begun. The kitchen operates like a machine, with every cook serving a specific function. You quickly learn that efficiency isn't just about speed, it's about survival. The faster you prepare the food, the less time you're exposed and vulnerable. The more organized you are, the less fuel you waste. In war, even cooking becomes a tactical operation. Always keep your head down, the sergeant instructs as you prepare lunch stew, and listen for incoming. You'll hear the whistle before the explosion. As if on cue, a distant rumbling shakes the ground. Artillery, but too far away to be a concern. Still, several of the newer cooks duck instinctively. You'll get used to it, an older cook tells you. After a while, you can tell how close they are just from the sound. When you need to worry is when you hear them but don't have time to be scared before they hit. With the lunch stew simmering, the sergeant calls you over to a separate section of the field kitchen. Here, several large metal boxes sit on the ground, each about the size of a small footlocker. "These," he says, patting one of the boxes, "are your new best friends, Mermite containers. We use them to transport hot food to positions too dangerous or remote for the men to come to us." He opens one to show you the design. Inside are several compartments separated by insulated walls. You can put hot stew in one section, bread in another, dessert in the third. Keeps everything at temperature for hours. When the fighting is too heavy for the men to break for meals, we send these out instead. "Who delivers them?" you ask, already suspecting the answer. "We do," he replies, confirming your fear. "Usually the newest cook gets the honor. Hope you remember your basic training, because delivering these will take you right up to the front lines." Your mouth goes dry at the thought. When you volunteered for kitchen duty, you'd hope to stay away from the worst of the fighting. Now you realize that might have been naive. "Don't look so worried," the sergeant says, actually showing a hint of compassion. "They usually don't target a single man running food, usually." That afternoon, you get your first taste of Mermite duty. The stew is ladled into the containers, bread is wrapped and placed in its compartment, and coffee is poured into insulated pots. Then the sergeant hands you a map with an X marked on it. "Second Platoon, B Company," he says. "They're dug in about a mile east of here. Follow this path, keep your head down and don't spill the food. Those boys haven't had a hot meal in 3 days. The containers are heavier than they look, especially when filled with food. You struggle to lift 2 of them, one in each hand. Take this too," says the skinny private, handing you a rifle. "Just in case." "In case of what?" you ask, not sure how you'll carry it along with the food. "In case you want to shoot yourself rather than come back for another shift in this kitchen," he jokes, but then turns serious. "Strap it to your back. You probably won't need it, but you don't want to be caught without it." With the mermites weighing down your arms and the rifle awkward on your back, you set off. The well-worn path leads through a wooded area, offering some cover. As you walk, the sounds of the camp fade behind you, replaced by an eerie quiet occasionally broken by distant gunfire. Your heart races. With each step, every shadow could be an enemy soldier. Every sound could be a sniper taking aim. The weight of the containers makes your progress slow, and your arms begin to tremble with the effort. After what feels like hours but is probably only 20 minutes, you hear voices ahead, American voices. Relief washes over you as you approach a series of foxholes and makeshift barriers where soldiers are positioned. "Food's here," someone calls out when they spot you, and suddenly you're surrounded by grateful men. "About damn time," says a lieutenant, but there's no real anger in his voice. "What have you got for us, Cookie?" "Beef stew," you reply, setting down the containers with shaking arms. "And bread, coffee too." "Real beef?" asks a private skeptically. You think about the tough, stringy meat you helped prepare that morning, officially labelled as beef but of highly questionable origin. "Army beef," you answer diplomatically. They laugh, understanding perfectly what that means. As they open the containers and the smell of hot food wafts out, you see the change in their faces. Exhaustion gives way to pleasure, if only momentarily. Some close their eyes as they take their first bite, savouring the simple comfort of a warm meal. "You don't know what this means, buddy," a sergeant tells you as he collects portions for the men who can't leave their positions. "We've been eating cold K rations since Tuesday." You watch as they eat, struck by how something so basic food you might have complained about in civilian life can bring such joy in these circumstances. Despite the danger of your delivery mission, despite your exhaustion, you feel a strange sense of pride. "Better get back before it gets dark," the lieutenant advises, handing you the empty containers. "And thanks, really." The walk back is just as tense, but faster without the weight of the food. When you arrive at the field kitchen, the sergeant merely nods, which you've learned is his version of high praise. "Good job not dying," the skinny private says cheerfully. "Now help me with dinner prep. We're trying to make something edible out of powdered eggs and canned ham." And so your day continues. Prep, cook, serve, clean, repeat. By evening, you've been on your feet for over 14 hours. Every muscle aches. Your hands are a mess of cuts, burns, and blisters. Your uniform is stiff with sweat and food residue. Dinner service is similar to breakfast, though the men are even more tired now, their faces grimmer with the day's experiences. You serve mechanically, too exhausted to even register their faces anymore. After the last man is fed, after the last pot is cleaned, the sergeant finally releases you for the night. It's past 9 p.m. "Get some sleep," he says. "We start again at 400. You drag yourself back to your tent, barely able to keep your eyes open. Your cot, which seems so uncomfortable this morning, now looks like the most inviting bed in the world. You don't even bother to remove your boots, just collapse onto the rough blanket. As you drift off to sleep, images from the day flash through your mind. The mountains of potatoes, the rotting bacon, the grateful faces of the men at the front line. In your last moments of consciousness, a strange thought occurs to you. Perhaps being a field cook isn't so different from being a combat soldier after all. Your weapons might be ladles instead of rifles. Your battles fought against time and scarcity rather than enemy soldiers, but the stakes feel just as high. A man's survival might not depend on how well you can shoot, but it absolutely depends on whether you can feed him. Tomorrow will bring another day of the same challenges, another day of improvising, of making do, of turning meagre supplies into meals that keep an army going. Another day of burns and cuts and back-breaking labour. Another day of wondering if this is the time your kitchen will be targeted. But as you finally succumb to sleep, there's a small, surprising sense of purpose settling in your chest. In a world torn apart by violence, you're creating something instead of destroying, feeding instead of killing. It's not the glory you might have imagined when the war began, but it's something real, something necessary. Your last thought before sleep claims you completely. Maybe this is exactly where you're meant to be. Unlike your cozy bed right now, where you're safe and warm, where no sergeant will wake you at 4 a.m. to peel potatoes, where no one's life depends on your cooking skills, as you sink deeper into your own comfortable pillows, imagine how precious sleep must have been to those field cooks, knowing another punishing day awaited them just a few hours away. The sergeant's boot connects with your cot at exactly 0400, right on schedule. "Rise and shine, cupcake. We've got a special visitor today." You pry your eyes open, body still aching from yesterday. The tent is pitch black, the only light coming from the sergeant's flashlight as he moves on to wake the next victim. "Who's coming?" you mumble, already pulling on your boots. "Colonel Bryant, Division Quartermaster." The skinny private from yesterday, whose name you've learned is Miller whispers from the darkness. "Big shot from HQ. Sergeant's been losing his mind about it since midnight when the message came through." Shit. No wonder the sergeant seems even more on edge than usual. Outside, the pre-dawn air bites at your face. April in Europe means the nights are still freezing, though the days sometimes hint at warmth. The field kitchen is already alive with activity, fires roaring in the Gulash Kanona. Listen up. The sergeant gathers the kitchen crew. His face looks haggard in the firelight, like he hasn't slept at all. The quartermaster is inspecting our operation today. That means everything needs to be perfect. And I mean actually perfect, not army perfect. He paces as he speaks, his anxiety infecting the group. He's bringing our new ration allocation. Word is supplies are getting tighter. The push into Germany is stretching the supply lines thin, and the brass are cutting rations across the board. A collective groan rises from the crew. Cut the belly aching, the sergeant snaps. We've got work to do. Today's menu is supposed to be powdered eggs, bacon, and toast for breakfast, beef stew and biscuits for lunch, meatloaf and potatoes for dinner. With what supplies? Asks an older cook named Jenkins. We're already scraping bottom on everything but potatoes. That's why the quartermaster is coming, genius. The sergeant rubs his temples. But he's not showing up till 0900, so we've got 5 hours to make this place inspection ready and somehow serve breakfast with what we've got. He turns to you suddenly. You. Take inventory. I want to know exactly what we have to work with. You head to the supply tent, flashlight in hand. The canvas structure holds what remains of your food stores, and it's not encouraging. Half-empty sacks of flour, a small amount of powdered eggs, coffee thank God, some tins of mysterious meat products, dehydrated vegetables, a few precious onions, lard, salt, pepper, a dwindling supply of sugar. You write everything down meticulously, painfully aware that it's not enough to make what's on the menu, not even close. When you return with the inventory list, the sergeant studies it with a deepening frown. Okay, he says finally, here's what we're going to do. Stretch the powdered eggs with extra water and a bit of flour to bulk them up. We'll fry up what's left of the bacon, but cut it smaller, thin strips. More pieces, less actual bacon per man. The toast, we've got bread from yesterday. Slice it thin, toast it hard. It'll be like eating cardboard, Miller comments. You got a better idea, the sergeant challenges. When Miller falls silent, he continues, I didn't think so. Now get moving. Breakfast at 600 sharp. The kitchen crew springs into action. You're assigned to the eggs, which turns out to be an education in creative cooking. The powdered eggs, when mixed just with water, make a pale, runny approximation of scrambled eggs. But by adding flour, a tiny bit of powdered milk, and beating the mixture vigorously, it takes on a more substantial texture. Add a pinch of this, Jenkins says, handing you a small packet of yellow powder. What is it? You ask, suspicious. Turmeric makes the eggs look more like eggs instead of library paste, he winks. Been carrying my own little stash since North Africa. The things you learn in desperate times. You sprinkle in the turmeric, amazed as the pale mixture takes on a more appetizing golden hue. Where'd you learn this trick? My grandmother, Jenkins says, already moving on to his next task. She lived through the Depression, said hunger makes you creative. As you cook the egg mixture in massive pans over the fires, you watch the other preparations. Miller is slicing bacon with surgical precision, creating pieces so thin they're almost transparent. 2 other cooks are working on the toast, cutting yesterday's loaves into slices barely thicker than paper, then browning them over the fire. They're burning the toast on purpose, Miller tells you when he notices your puzzled expression. Charred toast tastes better than stale bread, plus the black hides the spots of mold. Your stomach turns at this information, but you keep cooking. In war, food safety becomes flexible. By some miracle, breakfast is ready on time. The men file through, receiving their meagre portions with varying degrees of grace. Some grumble about the small servings, others are just grateful for hot food. You notice the sergeant giving slightly larger portions to the men who look the most exhausted, the ones with 1,000-yard stares and hands that tremble slightly as they hold out their mess kits. After breakfast, the real work begins. The sergeant has you scrubbing every surface of the field kitchen until it gleams, or at least until it looks less like a grease pit and more like a place where food might be safely prepared. The quartermaster isn't just inspecting, Jenkins explains, as you work side by side, scraping burnt egg from a massive pan. He's deciding if we get priority on the supply chain or if we get the leftovers after the other units are served. That can happen, you ask? Politics, kid. Even in war, especially in war, every unit wants the best for their men. Quartermaster's job is to decide who gets what. If he likes what he sees here, we get better supplies. If not, he makes a slashing motion across his throat. The hours crawl by. By 0845, the field kitchen is as clean as it's ever going to get. The sergeant inspects every corner, barking orders for last-minute adjustments. At precisely 0900, a jeep roars into camp. Colonel Bryant is a small man with a permanent scowl and clipboard that seems attached to his hand. He barely acknowledges the sergeant's salute before launching into his inspection. "Show me your stores," he demands. The sergeant leads him to the supply tent, where your carefully organized but pathetically depleted supplies await. You and the rest of the crew hover anxiously nearby. "This is it?" The colonel's eyebrows rise. "How have you been feeding your unit?" "Creatively, sir," the sergeant responds, standing at attention. "Show me your waste logs." The sergeant produces a ledger where he records everything that's discarded. In theory, it should be a record of spoiled food or inedible scraps. In practice, it's almost blank because you literally can't afford to throw anything away. The colonel flips through it, his frown deepening. "According to this, you've had almost no waste for 3 weeks. That's impossible unless we're using everything, sir," the sergeant interrupts. "Which we are." For a moment, the colonel is silent. Then, "Show me how." What follows is a bizarre cooking demonstration. The sergeant takes the colonel through your improvised techniques, how you extend meat by adding breadcrumbs and flour, how you use every part of every vegetable, how you repurpose stale bread into croutons or breadcrumbs or toast, how you transform leftovers into new dishes rather than discarding them. And this? The colonel points to a bucket of what looks like dirty water with vegetable scraps floating in it. "Stock, sir," the sergeant explains. "We save all vegetable trimmings, bones, meat scraps, simmer them to extract flavour. Nothing gets thrown away." The colonel makes notes on his clipboard, his expression unreadable. Then he moves on to inspect the goulash cannoli and the rest of your equipment. "Your fuel usage is well below average for a unit this size," he notes, reviewing more records. Explanation? The sergeant hesitates. "We supplement with whatever we can find, sir," meaning wood from the surrounding area, sometimes coal if we can get it. We only use the issued petroleum when absolutely necessary. More notes on the clipboard. The colonel's face gives nothing away. Finally, after nearly 2 hours of inspection, the colonel addresses the entire kitchen crew. "I've visited 12 field kitchens this week," he says, his voice crisp. "Most are struggling with the supply situation. Most are sending requests for double or triple what they actually need, hoping to get enough. Most are wasting 15-20% of what they receive." He pauses, looking each of you in the eye. "This operation is different. Your efficiency metrics are exceptional. Your waste is minimal. Your improvisation is..." He seems to search for the right word. "Commendable." The sergeant stands a little straighter. "I'm authorizing a special supply drop for your unit," the colonel continues. "Not because you need more than others, but because you've proven you'll make the most of it." Relief washes over the crew. The colonel hands the sergeant a packet of papers. These are your new ration cards and allocation. There's also something else in there: training materials, new techniques for preservation and preparation that we've been developing. I want you to implement them and report back on their effectiveness. Yes, sir, the sergeant says, accepting the packet like it's made of gold. One more thing, the colonel adds. I'm assigning your unit to train other kitchen crews in your methods. Sergeant, select 2 of your men to create a demonstration program. Starting next week, you'll receive visitors from other units. With that, he returns to his jeep and is gone in a cloud of dust, leaving behind a stunned kitchen crew. Holy shit, Miller breathes once the colonel is out of earshot. Did we just get promoted? More like additional duties, Jenkins mutters, but he's smiling. The sergeant is already tearing into the packet, reviewing the new allocation. His eyebrows rise higher with each page. We're getting double butter rations, he announces, and canned meat. Real canned meat, not that mystery stuff. Extra coffee too. A cheer goes up from the crew, quickly hushed by the sergeant. Don't get too excited. We've still got lunch to prepare, and now we've got these new techniques to learn. He pulls out a smaller booklet from the packet. Apparently the food scientists back home have been busy. He hands the booklet to you. You seem smart enough. Study this, then teach the rest of us. The title reads, Advanced Field Preservation and Preparation Techniques, Classified. Over the next hour, as lunch preparations continue around you, you pore over the booklet. It's fascinating stuff: scientific approaches to food preservation, nutritional calculations, methods for extending shelf life, techniques for maximizing flavor with minimal ingredients. One section particularly catches your eye: emergency substitutions. It lists dozens of creative replacements for standard ingredients: coffee made from acorns, flour extended with ground tree bark, meat substitutes made from mushrooms. It's survival cooking taken to an extreme. Anything useful in there? The sergeant asks, pausing beside you. You look up. It's amazing, Sarge. Some of this stuff is like cooking magic, but some of it... What? Some of it's basically starvation cooking. Like, there's a section on how to make bread with sawdust when flour runs out. It works, but it's barely food. The sergeant's face darkens. That's why the colonel was so interested in our methods. Things must be getting worse with the supply chain than they're telling us. He takes the booklet, flips through it quickly, then hands it back. Keep this close. I have a feeling we're going to need it. The afternoon passes in a blur of activity. Lunch is served a stew made more flavorful by the stock you've been saving, stretched with extra potatoes but still satisfying. Then it's immediately on to dinner prep and implementing some of the new techniques from the booklet. You show Jenkins and Miller a method for tenderizing tough meat using a brine solution with baking soda. It breaks down the proteins, you explain, reading from the booklet, makes even the toughest cuts edible. Where do they come up with this stuff? Miller asks, watching skeptically as you prepare the brine. Scientists, you reply. Says here they've got whole laboratories back home just working on how to feed the army better. Seems like they could just send us more food instead of clever ways to make garbage edible, Miller grumbles. Jenkins cuffs him lightly on the back of the head. Use your brain, kid. If they could send more food, they would. This is about making do with what we've got. As evening approaches, you're implementing another new technique, bread fortification. By adding extra protein in the form of powdered milk and a tiny amount of ground peanuts to the dough, you can significantly increase the nutritional value without changing the taste much. It doesn't look that different, Miller notes as you knead the dough. That's the point, you say. The men get more nutrition without feeling like they're eating weird science experiments. The promised supply drop arrives just before dinner crates of provisions that are quickly unpacked and inventoried. As the sergeant predicted, it's better quality than your usual shipments. Real canned meat, butter, coffee, even a few luxury items like chocolate and canned peaches. Special occasion only, the sergeant says, locking away the chocolate. When the men really need a morale boost. Dinner preparation takes on a festive air with the new supplies. The meatloaf actually contains recognisable meat. The potatoes are mashed with real butter. There's even gravy made from actual drippings rather than just flour and water coloured with coffee. As the men file through for dinner, their reaction is immediate. Eyes widen at the sight of the improved food. Comments of appreciation flow freely. One grizzled staff sergeant actually stops to shake your hand. "Whatever you boys are doing different, keep it up," he says. "Best meal I've had since Paris." That night, as you finally collapse into your cot, exhausted but satisfied, Miller flops down beside you. "So," he says, "you think we can actually pull this off? Teaching other units our methods?" You think about the day's events, the inspection, the new techniques, the improved supplies, the satisfied faces of the men at dinner. "Yeah," you reply, "I think we can." Miller is quiet for a moment. "You know what's weird? Before the war, I hated cooking, couldn't boil water without burning it. Now look at me, practically a chef." You laugh. "War does strange things to people." "True that." Miller yawns. "See you at 400, Cookie." As you drift towards sleep, your mind turns over everything you've learned today, the science behind field cooking, the desperate creativity born of scarcity, the thin line between nutrition and starvation that you walk every day as a field cook. In civilian life, cooking was about pleasure, about taste, about choice. Here, it's about survival. Every calorie counts. Every nutrient matters. A man's fighting strength, his very life depends on what you put in his mess kit. It's a responsibility you never expected to have, but as sleep claims you, you realize it's one you're starting to take pride in. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new improvisations, new lessons in the brutal arithmetic of feeding an army on dwindling supplies. But tonight, at least, you fed them well. And in war, perhaps that's victory enough. As you drift off in your uncomfortable cot, so different from your comfortable bed right now, you wonder what new cooking challenges tomorrow will bring. But that's for tomorrow. For now, sleep claims you, dreamless and deep. A terrifying whistling sound tears through the air, getting louder by the second. Incoming, your body reacts before your mind does. Diving for the nearest foxhole, you slam into the dirt next to Jenkins as the shell hits somewhere behind the field kitchen. The ground shakes. Dirt rains down. Your ears ring with the explosion. "Son of a bitch," Jenkins mutters, peering over the edge. They hit the latrine. 3 weeks have passed since the quartermaster's visit, and everything has changed. Your unit has pushed deeper into Germany, following the front line as Allied forces press toward Berlin. The relative safety of the rear echelon is gone. Now you're cooking less than a mile from active combat. "All clear," the sergeant's voice cuts through the chaos. "Back to work. Those potatoes won't peel themselves." You climb out of the foxhole, legs shaky, and stumble back to your station. The massive pot of stew you were stirring has been knocked over by the concussion, its contents spilled across the dirt. "Well, shit," you sigh, looking at the mess. "Clean it up and start again," the sergeant orders, already moving on to assess other damage. "We've still got 200 men to feed by noon." This is your life now. Cooking under fire. The constant tension of knowing the next shell might have your name on it. The responsibility of keeping men fed despite everything the war throws at you. The routine that seemed so grueling back at the training camp now feels like a luxury. Wake at 0400. Prepare breakfast by 0600. Clean up. Prepare lunch by 1200. Clean up. Prepare dinner by 1800. Clean up. Sleep. Repeat. Simple. Predictable. There's nothing predictable about your current situation. Schedules are disrupted by artillery barrages, sudden orders to move, or the field kitchen itself being targeted. Food supplies arrive irregularly, if at all. Water essential for cooking must be hauled from sources that aren't always close or clean. 2 more wounded last night, Miller tells you as you work together to salvage what you can of the spilled stew. Peterson and Ramirez hit during a patrol. They're setting up a field hospital about half a mile back. You nod grimly. The casualties have been increasing as the fighting intensifies. You've been assigned to deliver meals to the wounded at the field hospital every evening, an additional duty that exposes you to the brutal reality of war in ways kitchen work usually doesn't. Save whatever meat you can find, you tell Miller, scooping up chunks from the cleaner parts of the spill. We'll wash it off and reuse it. He grimaces but follows your lead. You've both learned that waste isn't an option. Not here, not now. By some miracle, you manage to prepare a new batch of stew before lunchtime. It's thinner than planned, with less meat and more root vegetables, but it's hot and filling. The men coming in shifts from the front line are too hungry to complain. "Thanks, Cookie," a mud-splattered corporal says as you ladle stew into his mess kit. His hands are trembling slightly, the subtle tremor of a man who's seen too much combat. "Smells good. Fresh this morning," you reply, giving him a slightly larger portion than regulation. He looks like he needs it. "Bullshit," he says with a tired grin. "Nothing's fresh out here except the graves." Dark humour, the kind that would shock civilians back home but keeps soldiers sane on the front. You've grown used to it. "Fine, the rat I caught in your foxhole this morning wasn't exactly fresh," you shoot back, "but I cooked it special for you." He laughs, an actual genuine laugh, and for a moment the haunted look leaves his eyes. That's another part of your job, not just filling bellies, but providing moments of normalcy, brief respites from the horror. After lunch service, the sergeant gathers the kitchen crew. His face is grim. "New orders," he announces. "We're moving the kitchen forward tonight." A collective groan rises from the group. "Can it?" he snaps. "The lines have shifted. Our boys have pushed the Germans back another mile. Command wants the kitchen closer to support the advance." "Closer to the fighting, you mean?" Jenkins mutters. The sergeant ignores him. "We move at 0100. I want everything packed and ready by midnight. We'll set up in the new location before breakfast." Moving a field kitchen is back-breaking work under the best conditions. Moving it in the middle of the night, in hostile territory, with minimal lighting to avoid attracting enemy fire, is a special kind of hell. Every component of the Gulash Kanoni must be dismantled, loaded onto trucks, transported and reassembled. The massive cauldrons, the heating elements, the chimney sections, the fuel supplies, the water tanks, not to mention all the food stores, utensils and personal equipment. "This is insane," Miller whispers as you work together to pack crates of cooking equipment. "Moving at night? We could hit a mine, or run into a German patrol, or get strafed by aircraft." "Better than moving during daylight and definitely getting spotted," you reply, though you share his concern. "I didn't sign up to be this close to the action," he continues. "I became a cook specifically to avoid getting shot at." "How's that working out for you?" you ask dryly. He gives a short, humourless laugh, about as well as your plan to avoid KP duty back home by joining the army. At midnight precisely, the sergeant inspects the packed equipment. Everything is ready. The trucks have arrived, 3 2.5-ton GMCs with canvas covers, their headlights taped to narrow slits to minimize visibility. "All listen up," the sergeant addresses the kitchen crew. "This move is necessary but dangerous. We'll be traveling in a convoy. No lights except the taped headlights. No talking, no smoking. If we're attacked, abandon the vehicles and find cover immediately. The equipment can be replaced." You can't. It's a sobering briefing. For the first time, you fully realize how exposed you'll be during the move. "One more thing," the sergeant adds. "Each of you take a weapon, rifles in the cab with you, just in case. The weight of the M1 Garand in your hands feels foreign, uncomfortable. You've had basic weapons training, of course, but you're a cook, not a combat soldier. The idea of actually using the rifle against another human being makes your stomach turn." At 100 sharp, the convoy begins to move. You're in the second truck with Miller and Jenkins. The night is overcast, no moonlight to help navigate, which is both a blessing and a curse. Harder for the enemy to spot you, but harder for your drivers to see the rutted, bomb-cratered roads. The truck lurches forward, bouncing violently over the uneven terrain. The canvas sides flap in the wind. Every few minutes, the sound of distant artillery punctuates the night. Flashes on the horizon briefly illuminate the landscape in stark, unnatural light. "Like driving through hell," Jenkins mutters beside you, breaking the no-talking rule. Nobody corrects him. The journey is only supposed to take an hour, but it stretches to nearly 3 as your convoy navigates around destroyed bridges, roadblocks, and areas of active fighting. Every minute is tense, your body rigid with fear, the rifle clutched in your sweaty hands. Finally, the truck stops. You've arrived at the new location, a small clearing near a bombed-out village. The front lines are less than half a mile away. You can hear small arms fire in the distance. "Out and unload," the sergeant orders. "We need to be set up before first light." Exhausted from the journey and lack of sleep, you still have to unpack and reassemble the entire field kitchen. It's grueling work in the pre-dawn darkness, made more challenging by the need to stay quiet and avoid using lights that might attract enemy attention. The new position has one advantage, a small stream nearby that provides a water source, but it also has a major disadvantage. It's exposed on the eastern side, with only minimal tree cover separating you from potential German observation posts. "We'll have to camouflage the smoke," the sergeant says, examining the site. "Jenkins, rig up a dispersal system for the chimney. I don't want a column of smoke pointing the Krauts right to us." Jenkins nods. He's done this before, creating a system of baffles and covers that spreads the smoke from the cooking fires horizontally rather than letting it rise in a visible column. Dawn breaks as you finish setting up. Everyone is dead on their feet, having been awake for over 24 hours straight. But there's no rest, yet breakfast still needs to be prepared. "Simple meal this morning," the sergeant announces. "Oatmeal, coffee, hardtack. That's it. We don't have time for anything fancy." You're assigned to the coffee, perhaps the most important element of breakfast for men who've been fighting all night. The process is familiar enough to do on autopilot. Fill the massive pot with water from the stream, build a fire in the goulash canoni's firebox, bring the water to a boil, add the precious coffee grounds, let it brew. As the water heats, you hear a new sound cutting through the morning air, the distinctive crack of a sniper rifle, followed by the ping of a bullet hitting metal nearby. "Down," the sergeant roars. Everyone drops to the ground. Another shot rings out, this one striking one of the coffee pots, sending a spray of hot water into the air. "They can see us," Jenkins hisses. "Told you this position was too exposed." The sergeant crawls toward the nearest truck, keeping his body low. He returns moments later with a field radio. "Support coming," he says tersely. "Counter-sniper team, but we need to get the camouflage netting up now." For the next 20 minutes, you work in a terrifying game of cat and mouse. Staying low, moving in short bursts, you help string camouflage netting over the field kitchen. Every few minutes, the sniper takes another shot, keeping you pinned down but thankfully not hitting anyone. Finally, a squad from your unit arrives, including 2 snipers with scoped rifles. They immediately take positions at the edge of the clearing, scanning the tree line to the east. "Keep cooking," the squad leader tells you. "We'll handle the kraut." It's surreal, preparing breakfast while a sniper duel unfolds less than 100 yards away. The sharp crack of rifles punctuates the morning as you stir the oatmeal and salvage what's left of the coffee. Your hands shake, but you keep working. The men will be arriving for food soon, hungry after a night of combat. A final shot rings out, followed by a cheer from your unit's snipers. "Got him," the squad leader reports to your sergeant. "You should be clear now, but keep that netting up just in case." Breakfast is served under the camouflage netting, creating a strange, dappled light across the serving area. The men arrive in small groups, dirty and exhausted from overnight operations. Many have the hollow-eyed look of soldiers who've been in constant combat too long. "Sorry about the simple breakfast," you say to one particularly gaunt-looking private as you ladle oatmeal into his mess kit. "We had to move during the night." "Are you kidding?" he replies. "Hot food is hot food. We've been eating cold K rations for days." By mid-morning, the situation has stabilized somewhat. The immediate threat is gone, but the new reality of your position remains. You're now a forward field kitchen directly supporting frontline operations. The danger is constant. "Get some sleep," the sergeant tells the crew after breakfast is cleaned up. 2-hour shifts. I need everyone fresh for lunch prep. You find a spot under one of the trucks, curl up on your bedroll, and fall into an exhausted sleep almost instantly. It feels like only minutes have passed when Miller shakes you awake. "Your shift," he says. "Sergeant wants you on bread duty for lunch." Bread is tricky in field conditions. The portable ovens attached to the goulash kanona are temperamental at best, especially with the inconsistent fuel you're forced to use, but bread is also vital filling, transportable, and a comfort food that reminds men of home. You mix the dough quickly using the fortification techniques from the special manual. Extra protein from powdered milk, a little vegetable oil for fat, just enough sugar to feed the yeast. You've become expert at knowing the exact consistency by feeler skill no recipe can teach. While the dough rises, you help prepare the main courser pasta dish with what the supply officer optimistically labelled meat sauce. The actual meat content is questionable, but with enough tomato paste, herbs and careful seasoning, it becomes something appealingly food-like. The sound of vehicles approaching interrupts your work. Not the familiar rumble of American trucks, but something different. Everyone freezes. "Tigers," Jenkins says, his voice tight. "German tanks." The sergeant is already moving. "Get to the foxholes, now." You abandon the food and run for the nearest foxhole, diving in headfirst as the first shell whistles overhead. It explodes somewhere behind you, the concussion slamming into your back like a giant fist. More shells follow. The Germans can't see you directly thanks to the camouflage, but they're bracketing the area where they suspect you might be, walking artillery fire across the clearing in a deadly pattern. In the foxhole with you are Miller and a young cook's assistant named Parker, barely 18. Parker's face is white with terror, his body trembling uncontrollably. "First time under fire?" you ask him, trying to sound calmer than you feel. He nods, unable to speak. "Just keep your head down," you say. "It'll pass." But the barrage continues, intensifies. Dirt and debris rain down on your foxhole. The sound is overwhelming, not just the explosions, but the ripping, tearing sound of trees being shredded by shrapnel. They're gonna hit the kitchen, Miller says grimly. All that work for nothing. As if summoned by his words, a massive explosion erupts from the direction of the goulash canon. You risk a peek over the edge of the foxhole and your heart sinks. Direct hit. One of the trucks is burning and parts of the field kitchen are scattered across the clearing. The barrage continues for what feels like hours, but is probably only 20 minutes. When it finally stops, the silence is almost as shocking as the noise was. "Stay down," Miller warns as Parker makes to stand up. They always wait to see if anyone moves, then they start again. Sure enough, after a tense minute of silence, another shell screams in, exploding near where the sergeant's foxhole is located, then nothing. "Testing," Miller explains. "Seeing if they got us all." Another 5 minutes pass before the sergeant's voice rings out. "Sound off by Foxhole 1. 2 here," comes a reply from somewhere to your right. 3 here, Miller shouts, and so it goes, each foxhole reporting in. Miraculously, no one is dead, though several cooks have minor injuries from flying debris. When it's finally safe to emerge, the devastation is clear. One truck is completely destroyed. The goulash canon is damaged, but intact, the sturdy field kitchen having survived worse in its long service. Food and supplies are scattered everywhere, much of it unsalvageable. "Assess and report," the sergeant orders, his own face streaked with dirt and blood from a cut on his forehead. "I need to know what we can still use. The bread dough you were working on is covered in dirt and debris. The pasta is ruined. Most of the prepared food is contaminated by soil, shrapnel, or chemicals from the explosives. We've got canned goods that survived," Jenkins reports. "Some of the flour and sugar in sealed containers. Coffee's okay. Water tank is intact, but we need to test for contamination." The sergeant processes this information, his expression grim. "We've still got men to feed," he says finally. "We'll have to improvise. Again." Over the next few hours, you witness the incredible resilience of the field kitchen crew. The damaged equipment is repaired using parts salvaged from the destroyed truck. Clean water is hauled from the stream. New bread is mixed. Canned meat and vegetables are combined into a simple but nutritious stew. By some miracle, lunch is ready only an hour later than scheduled. It's not what was planned, but it's hot and fills the belly a minor victory snatched from disaster. As you serve the makeshift meal, you notice the men seem especially grateful today. Word of the artillery strike has spread. They know what the kitchen crew endured to feed them. "Heard you guys took a direct hit," a lieutenant says as you fill his mess kit. "Thanks for still getting chow ready. Means a lot to the men." You nod, too exhausted for words. The adrenaline that kept you going through the barrage and aftermath has drained away, leaving a bone-deep weariness. After lunch, as you're cleaning up, Parker approaches you. "I froze up," he says, shame evident in his voice. "During the shelling, I couldn't even talk." "Everyone freezes their first time," you reply. "What matters is you stayed in the foxhole like you were supposed to. And you're here now, helping." "How do you get used to it?" he asks. You think about this. You don't, not really. You just learn to function despite it. It's the truth. 3 weeks at the front hasn't made the fear go away. It's just taught you to work through it, to keep cooking even as shells fall around you, to focus on the mission feeding the men no matter what. That night, as you finally collapse onto your bedroll, you find yourself thinking about how much has changed. When you first joined the kitchen crew, your biggest concerns were mundane peeling potatoes fast enough, keeping the sergeant happy, avoiding burns from the cooking fires. Now you live in a world where sniper fire interrupts breakfast preparation and artillery can destroy hours of work in seconds, where the simple act of delivering food to the men can mean risking your life, where eating might be a soldier's last act before dying in combat. Yet something else has changed too. A bond has formed among the kitchen crew, forged in shared danger and hardship. You're no longer just cooking together, you're surviving together. Every meal served is an act of defiance against the chaos of war. As sleep begins to claim you, you hear Miller's voice from nearby. "Hey," he says softly, "you know what's crazy? I actually miss the days when all we had to worry about was the sergeant yelling about potato peeling." You smile in the darkness. "We'll get back there," you murmur. "Just gotta survive this first." "Yeah," he replies. "One meal at a time. One meal at a time." It's become your mantra, your way of breaking the overwhelming task of war into manageable pieces. Just like the soldiers fight one battle at a time, you fight your war one meal at a time. As you drift off to sleep, the sound of distant artillery, your macabre lullaby, you wonder what tomorrow's meal will bring. But for now, in your warm, safe bed at home, so different from that hard ground beneath a destroyed field kitchen, you can rest, knowing that today, at least, you won those small battles. You kept the men fed. You survived. And in war, sometimes that's enough. The first snowflake lands on your nose as you're hauling water from the stream. By the time you make it back to the field kitchen, white flakes swirl through the air, catching in your eyelashes and melting against your skin. "Perfect," Jenkins mutters, glancing skyward. "Just what we needed. Winter in goddamn Germany." It's mid-November 1944. The Allied advance has slowed as supply lines stretch thin and German resistance stiffens. Your unit has been in the same position for nearly 3 weeks, the longest you've stayed anywhere since joining the front lines. Snow means the mud might finally freeze, you point out, trying to find the silver lining. The autumn rains have turned everything into a quagmire, making every task twice as difficult. "Yeah, and then we get to deal with frostbite and frozen pipes instead," Jenkins replies. "I was in the Ardennes in 40. Trust me, kid, you'd rather have mud." The sergeant approaches, his breath visible in the increasingly cold air. "Weather report says this is just the beginning. Big storm coming. I want all equipment winterized by end of day." Winterizing the field kitchen is a process you've trained for but never actually implemented. It involves wrapping pipes with insulation, setting up windbreaks around the cooking areas, digging storage pits in the ground to keep certain foods from freezing solid, and preparing the Gulashka none for operation in sub-zero temperatures. Miller, you and Parker dig the storage pits, deep enough that they won't freeze through. You, he points at you, work with Jenkins on insulating the water system. If our pipes freeze, we're screwed. By midday, the snow is falling steadily. A white blanket covers the camp, beautiful in a way that almost makes you forget the war until the distant crump of artillery breaks the silence. Germans usually ease up on shelling in bad weather, Jenkins tells you as you wrap pipes with strips of wool blanket. Their spotters can't see targets as well, but don't count on it. "What's the worst winter condition you've cooked in?" you ask, trying to get a sense of what's coming. Jenkins pauses, thinking. Belgium, early 40, temperature hit 15 below zero, cooking oil froze solid, bread dough was like concrete, coffee froze in the mugs before the men could finish drinking it. He shakes his head at the memory, lost 2 fingers to frostbite that winter. He holds up his left hand, showing the stumps where his pinky and ring finger should be. You've noticed the missing digits before, but never asked about them. How'd it happen? Spilled boiling water on my glove. Had to take it off to dry. By the time I realized how bad the frostbite was, it was too late. He flexes his remaining fingers. Could have been worse. A cook from another unit lost his whole hand, grabbed a metal pot without gloves, skin stuck to it like touching a frozen pump handle. His matter-of-fact tone chills you more than the falling snow. This isn't just uncomfortable weather, it's potentially lethal. By evening, 3 inches of snow blanket the camp, and the temperature has dropped dramatically. The winterizing is complete, but now you face a new challenge: dinner preparation in freezing conditions. We're switching to one-pot meals whenever possible, the sergeant announces. Less exposure, less fuel, less chance for things to go wrong. Tonight is stew, heavy on potatoes and whatever vegetables we've got left. The whatever we've got left part is concerning. Supply deliveries have become increasingly sporadic as winter weather affects the roads. Your last proper resupply was over a week ago, and stocks are running dangerously low. Inventory check, the sergeant orders, pointing at you and Miller. I need to know exactly what we've got and how long it will last. The inventory is grim. Flour for maybe 4 more days of bread, potatoes for 3 days if you stretch them, coffee, the lifeblood of the army, down to enough for just 2 days. Meat is practically non-existent, just a few cans of mystery protein that might be beef or might be worse. We're going to have to forage, the sergeant says after reviewing your findings. Local farms, abandoned villages, anything we can find. Sir, most of those areas haven't been fully cleared of enemy troops, you remind him. I'm aware of the risk, Private. That's why you'll go with a security detail. He looks you in the eye. First light tomorrow, dress warm. That night, dinner is a thin stew that barely qualifies as food, mostly water with chunks of potato, a few withered carrots, and precisely 1 piece of meat per serving. The bread is yesterday's loaves, slightly stale but edible when dipped in the broth. The men don't complain. They've grown accustomed to diminishing rations as winter approaches. They eat quickly, stamping their feet against the cold, then hurry back to whatever shelter they've found or created. Sleep comes fitfully in your freezing tent. The army-issue sleeping bag is bare.